What's going on, everyone? So the other day, a lot of you enjoyed the Boba Yellow video, but even more so, you enjoyed the dismantling Boba Yellow with one of my favorite decks as of late in the Cad Bane Green. So I decided to kind of continue the series, even though it's not really a series, by talking about arguably tied for the best deck, if not the best deck, or the second best deck in set 2 in Sabine Green. There are a couple different versions, but this type of Sabine Green ends up being a little bit more consistent, which we'll talk about in just a moment. And I'm going to follow up this video by trying to figure out a way to dismantle Sabine Green as well. They are the two top best decks in the meta for a reason, so don't expect to beat these easily. But before we talk about Sabine Green and this list in particular, I have two announcements to mention. First being, I have a TCG player link in the description down below. Go ahead and use it to pick up any of your set 2 or set 1 cards. It helps me out as well as helps you out. And the second thing is I have started a Patreon lately with some benefits as to potentially getting to play some viewer games with you all, or if you're interested in that, as well as sort of a roundtable discussion that I'm going to be setting up and an exclusive Patreon Discord. So if any of that interests you, go ahead and check out the Patreon down below. But let's talk about Sabine Green. Now, one of the big reasons as to why Sabine Green is held on this long and was one of the top decks in set 1 is because of her leader ability, just to guarantee you usually around 4 to 5 damage every single game. There are some turns where you don't use it because you want to take initiative, and there are just a lot of other turns where you're just using it every single turn. This essentially puts your opponent on a 25 HP base no matter what. Even if they're running a 30 HP base, you're like guaranteed only have to do 25 damage with Sabine's action. And the people who are on 25 HP bases, well, now they're on like 20, which is crazy. But more importantly is the fact that she deploys so early. And because she deploys so early, it almost guarantees an additional 3 damage, oftentimes 6 damage. Between those two things, we could do a lot. But what's made her, honestly, the powerhouse that she is in set 2 is Energy Conversion Lab plus some of the new cards. We're actually only running a few new cards, and the two most important new ones are Podameron and Wrecker, which makes Sabine Green the powerhouse that she is, because in set 1, once you got past like turn 5 or so, you were feeling pretty good, and there wasn't like that many ways to kind of ambush you for 1,000,000 damage, with the exception being like for a cause. But now with ECL on turn 5, you could be ECL Wrecker, and that is oftentimes a 5 or 6 damage hit to your base, not just killing your unit, but also a 5 or 6 damage hit to your base, because you could ECL out a Wrecker, deal 5 to something, and then hit it with the Wrecker Overwhelm, and then hit the opponent's base, which is really, really crazy. Podameron, also good, also a great ECL target. Not quite as good as Wrecker, but still amazing. ECLing him out, dealing 2 damage to your base, killing a unit, and then leaving him behind. Poe actually attacks for even more than Wrecker, ironically, even though he has less power, because of the fact that he is able to discard a card, deal 2 damage to a base. He attacks as an 8-powered attacker, which is really, really nuts. And the third ECL target that I want to mention, not necessarily new or anything, is K2, another Overwhelmer, another thing that doesn't really care that he dies or anything like that. Between these 3 targets being ECL'd out, mostly Wrecker, Poe a decent amount of time, and then sometimes K2, you have a lot of threat, a lot of reach, a lot of ways to kind of burn your opponent out. Wrecker kind of acts as a burn card at 6 resources, which is a little crazy. The rest of the deck, instead of running the Darksaber Sabine, which is the other Sabine I was kind of referencing early on, we are running the more traditional Rebel aggro version. I've tried both. I like the Darksaber a lot. It has a higher upside in that if you do have the nice curve of Mando, maybe they kill off one of your Mandos, so you only have one Mando out when you flip Sabine, but then you get a Darksaber on Sabine, and she attacks as a 7 power hit, or 6 power plus the 1 from her on attack trigger, 7 power into a base and an experience token. It could be one of the most disgusting turns in the game and end the game literally that turn with a Darksaber hit. If you have like 2 units that maybe survived, it could be disgusting. However, it's also all in. If they deal with Sabine, it can feel pretty bad. If they can kill Sabine before you can get the Darksaber on her, that can feel pretty bad. It's a 4 resource play. This deck is less high upside, like maximum upside, but also way higher floor. It is much more consistent and does its job so frequently, and that's what makes it scary. So we have the things that you're used to from set 1, the Fleet Lieutenants, the Wing Leaders that you curve into after playing your early turn 1 Rebel unit in A-Wing, Sabine Red, or Battlefield Marine. We also have the Fighters for Freedom and Red 3 in the 3-drop slot, getting some extra reach out of the Fighters for Freedom since we have mostly red cards in the deck. In terms of what colors we have, Red 3 can sometimes get in for additional 3 to 4 points of damage just by putting him on the battlefield. And then, of course, we have the 4 costs to act as additional reach. In terms of other new cards that we're adding to the deck outside of those units, we have Ketsuonyo, which is a really nice 2-drop. Sometimes this wins the game on its own, taking out Price on your heads, Bounty Hunters, Quarries, Experience tokens, Shield tokens, and just attacks as a 3-powered attacker with Saboteur, which is usually relevant. Cassian Andor is the other unit that I want to mention. This is essentially a 5-resource play. It can sometimes come down to 3 if you're really looking for something to survive, but oftentimes it could be a 5-resource play where he enters in ready, another way to get in damage where your opponent wouldn't expect it. But then we also have a few events and upgrades to talk about. We have the For a Cause, which you're definitely used to seeing, the Heroic Sacrifice to pump in a little bit of extra damage. Some of the traditional cards in Rebel Assault and Medal Ceremony. Rebel Assault gets in so much surprise damage and can guarantee damage where otherwise you wouldn't be able to. Like if you have initiative and you're trying to attack with 2 units and you know your opponent can kill one of them or both of them if they attack, well, Rebel Assault guarantees that damage and gives you a little bit extra on top. And Medal Ceremony is really for that Sabine flip turn. If we could get 2 experience off this, I'm really happy. And sometimes even getting 1 experience on your Sabine puts her out of force choke range or various things that can be ECL'd out on the following turn. And lastly, the new card that we have alongside our units here is Inspiring Mentor. Now, I've been really impressed with this option. You can find it being a little bit situational, but the nice thing about it comparatively to Darksaber is it doesn't cost nearly as much, and it actually gives you something back when that unit dies. This is a card that I don't mind playing on like an early Sabine Wren just to get in extra damage and then play like a R2 afterwards and spread an experience token around. And even if she dies, which she inevitably will for the most part, she gets to give another experience token to someone. Putting it on an early 3-drop, putting it on a Sabine, you can follow it up with another 2-resource play. It just gives you a lot of different options, and that's what I like about it. I also have a sideboard for this deck because, well, this is one of the better decks in the format. It's going to be something that you're going to come up against a lot, and that also means that we can kind of sideboard with this deck against both Sabine Greens, Boba Yellows, and some of the other things in the meta. We got a couple copies of Ewing Reinforcements. This really helps against the mid-range slash more slow decks in the format that are trying to ramp in. You can Ewing Reinforcements, pick up things like Double Wing Leader plus R2. You can get things like Fleet Lieutenant get in for a bunch of damage. You can get Pose, Wreckers, plus 1-drops, things like that. We got ourselves 2 copies of Traitorous. This really helps against upgrade decks and Tarkin. Bright Hope's really nice if you can time it well against a Fett's Fire Spray, or just really, really nice in any sort of deck that's trying to go a little bit more into the air. Against Sabine Green, it could be helpful, and against Tarkin Yellow, it could be helpful. Disabling Fangfighter, we only have the one of because the Traitorous ends up being kind of the same slot for this, albeit a little bit different. It depends on the matchup, but Disabling Fangfighter can target specific upgrade style of decks that are looking to upgrade maybe bigger units. And lastly, 2 copies of Sundari Peacekeeper. This is really, really good for the mirror or any aggro matchup where you can drop in some Sundari Peacekeepers and take out things like potentially Cassian or another 3-drop in order for you to get some nice trades in and restore up some HP. So that's going to be Sabine Green. We're going to dive into some games today, and we are going to show the power of Sabine Green. I wouldn't be surprised if these games are extremely quick and not close at all because she has so much power behind her. Let's dive into some games here. Okay, so we got ourselves a game against Mandalorian Red to start us off, and this is a perfectly reasonable hand. One thing you want to keep in mind with Wing Leaders is you really want to make sure you have another play on turn 2, just in case they go ahead and kill off whatever you played on turn 1, which makes Wing Leader obviously a very weak play on turn 2 as a 3-resource 2/1 space suit. Like, that's very, very weak. Depending on what they play here will determine whether or not I want to take initiative or deal with damage with my Sabine. There's also a chance that I would like to go turn 1 Battlefield Marine, turn 2 Red 3, turn 3 Sabine Wing Leader, Spec 4 Soldier. Okay, it looks like they don't have anything on turn 1, which is a very nice sign for us. Here, I think I just resource. Well, honestly, it could just be this Spec 4 Soldier. Even though Spec 4 Soldier is reasonable, usually yellow and red are not the colors of Sentinels, and Mandalorian's mainly about putting upgrades on stuff, so I'm not expecting any sort of Sentinel business to come out of Mandalorian Red. Our opponent had no turn 1 play, which puts them at a pretty heavy disadvantage, and they're also thinking quite a bit about what they're trying to resource here. So maybe they just had a bad hand, but they didn't mulligan, so not quite sure what's going on over there. Let's go ahead and get rid of this Spec 4 Soldier. For a Cause is a great card in this situation. Wanted, okay. I think in this spot, I will just go ahead and drop a Red 3. That's going to give me the most damage over the long run, so Red 3 is going to be pretty nice. Kind of curious about Wanted. They could have like an open fire. Liberated slaves, huh? All right, let's claim initiative. And the funny part about this is, Inspiring Mentor actually could be pretty good in this spot. I do like Inspiring Mentor plus Fighters for Freedom potentially on the next turn. But the funny thing about this is if they want to use these resources, they're gonna have to put an upgrade on their slaves, and then okay, guild target. That is, they do not need a guild target the Red 3. They probably, I mean, maybe they could kill it. I'm not sure, but let's go ahead and just deal damage with Sabine. It's very likely that they're going to go ahead and snapshot reflexes. I don't know what's going on here, to be honest. It's all crazy for me. Let's go ahead and get out of Sabine. Maybe they have another upgrade here. Not sure. Not sure entirely what is going on here. That is an A-Wing. Nice. I can go Wing Leader on the Sabine Wren, or I can Wing Leader the Red 3. Or I can Inspiring Mentor to pump the Red 3 to get it out of the A-Wing range. And then I can kill the liberated slaves. This might be a situation where I want to go a little bit more controlling. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and put an Inspiring Mentor on Sabine. And now, if they have another upgrade, so be it. They get to exhaust my Sabine. Well, they can't exhaust it because they've already done that. Never mind. I take it back. Also, it's 6 HP. We're going to kill their liberated slaves, and then we're going to pump up the Red 3. What this allows me to do is get rid of anything ground unit based, which is usually what the upgrades can be placed on. Like snapshot reflexes can be placed on anything, but usually upgrades are restricted to non-vehicles, so that's something to keep in mind. And it also saves my Red 3. If I got Wing Leader here, I could have pumped up my Sabine and attacked their base for a little bit more, but I probably would have lost the Red 3. Now, I could have instead killed the, Killed the, oh, wow, they just undid everything. Okay, well, our opponent's really thinking about everything and then apparently misclicking. But what was I going to resource? I guess I hadn't decided yet. I kind of want the 2-drop, so I think I'm going to resource this Fighters for Freedom. But I like getting their ground unit out of the way, and I like keeping my Red 3 alive. I could have Wing Leader the Red 3, and then, they're going to get rid of Inspiring Mentor. Huh, okay, sure, Disabling Fang Fighter, you got it. Let's go Wing Leader Rebel Assault. So let's go Wing Leader, pump up the Sabine at this point. And then we can Rebel Assault, or we can just play a Battlefield Marine. I am not against just playing a Battlefield Marine. Now, I could have ECL'd out Wing Leader, but again, there's not really a reason to do that. Let's just go ahead and attack in with the Sabine, get in for a ton of damage. This is 6 total damage with the Red 3. But as I was saying, there's not really a reason to go ahead and ECL it out because we have a lot of control over this game. And if we ever draw a Wrecker, if we ever draw a Poe Dameron, then we would be very, very sad to have resourced or used up the ECL in those cases. Here, Rebel Assault plus Cassian is an option. I am definitely going to be keeping the 2 burn spells, the K2 and the For a Cause. That's going to allow me to get in damage where I otherwise would not have. This is a matchup where Rebel Assault's really excellent because usually we were able to keep a couple units around and we can prevent them from tapping down certain stuff. So for example here, Rebel Assault attack in with Red 3 and then attack in with Sabine, and that is a massive amount of damage, right? And if we hadn't done that, they might have been able to tap down something, but doesn't matter. We go in with the GG. Our opponent had no turn 1 play, but if you're playing things like Wanted, Guild Targets, Snapshot Reflexes, obviously you reduce your amount of turn 1 plays. They went turn 2 Liberate Slaves, but clearly they had a kind of a weak draw. Who knows what they had in terms of later on in the game. I like the little bounty-oriented Mandalorian. I think that's a pretty cool theme, but nice first one. Nice first game to start us off. All right, we got ourselves against a Han Green. A little bit of new guard versus the old guard. We have a lot of 6 and 5 drops in our hand. We have Ketsu Onyo and Fleet Lieutenant. Ketsu Onyo is not even that great in this matchup necessarily, so I think that we are going to mulligan this. And this is a significantly better hand. I will go ahead and resource this A-Wing, and I will probably resource this Wrecker, and then just kind of keep the 2, 3 Wing Leader, also kind of like our 4 drop, and then Poe Dameron, which is a really nice curve. Battlefield Marine and a Fleet Lieutenant. It's one of the best things you can be doing on Sabine, for sure. So let's go Battlefield Marine. One of the things that we really don't want to see here. Oh, they're just going to claim initiative. That's crazy to me. That's a little crazy to me. I'm not going to lie, guys. That is very crazy to me. They have no 3 drops or less. You're my only hope. And they're just flipping it. And they hit a Bright Hope. Wow. Okay. What an interesting version of this style of deck, huh? All right, let's deal another damage and let's pass. What a situation to find ourselves in, huh? So we have K2, we have the Wing Leader. I don't know if we want a Wing Leader here, but I think we want to have the option to. And I'm not a huge fan of Bright Hope being on that side of the battlefield. And so A-Wing is probably going to go to the resource pile. One of the downsides to Wing Leader here is that Wing Leader itself can't get in damage because of the Bright Hope. So, you know, I guess. So we're going to resource the A-Wing. My guess is that I just want to get down to K2 this turn. That's what I'm thinking is going to happen. Most valuable in terms of using up our resources. Also just going to get us a nice little 3-hitter guaranteed next turn. Sonari Peacekeeper is a scary card by, you know, all intensive purposes. Let's see if they have a Poe Dameron here. Poe Dameron could be potentially scary. Okay, they do have a Poe Dameron here. I think what we're going to do is just ECL out this K2. I suppose we don't need to. I suppose we could keep our K2. You know what? There's no reason to ECL out this K2. I'd rather just get it on the board. We're not facing a ton of pressure here. And we can ECL out our Poe Dameron this turn, which is a lot stronger, especially since it's going to guarantee us 2 damage into their base. And this will die in a lot of situations and still deal 3 damage. Like if we were to ECL out K2, yeah, we kill Poe Dameron, we trade with Poe Dameron. But they can't actually ECL anything out that's like extremely scary. So they're going to kill off Sabine Wren. I don't know if that's necessarily the right play. I think they should actually potentially kill off K2. I mean, it's bad no matter what. Because if they kill K2, they're going to take 3, but now they take 4 from K2, which is kind of rough. They're just in a really bad spot. I mean, killing Sabine, it's tough. It's really, really tough for them. And they play a wedge, and that's going to be just straight up game. I not killing K2, I guess in their situation might have worked, but my thought process is, okay, the only way you kind of win this game is you kill K2 off, and then maybe you have some sort of sentinel to block all of my damage. But there wasn't really a realistic way for them to win this game, and we kind of just absolutely overrun them. This was a very different version of Han Green, not mid-range, not the flood the board. They're kind of playing like the You're My Only Hope combo style, which might be interesting. They have Wedge, Bright Hopes. It could be fun. I like the You're My Only Hope plus 4 of Cause. I think that's a pretty sweet combination. So I don't know, but definitely a quick game. All right, into our next matchup, we got ourselves a Kylo Green. Now, of all the flavors of Kylo Green is my least favorite. I am not a huge fan of Kylo Green. simply because the ECL, usually you want to flood the board and you don't have that many great targets. Here, I'm going to go ahead and resource a Cassian. I'd probably going to go Sabine into Battlefield Marine plus R2, keep the 4 cause. But also because you miss out on a decent amount without playing double red or even playing yellow, which can make things a little bit unfortunate. So here, they're playing Kylo, so I'm going to play a Sabine because of Death Star Stormtrooper. Exactly what I was mentioning earlier. Death Star Stormtrooper is Force Throw, huh? Okay, 4 cause is going away. Don't need 4 cause here. Battlefield Marine Poe Dameron. I think we could safely resource one of these Battlefield Marines. And then we're just going to kill their Death Star Stormtrooper. Keep our Sabine Wren around. And then we can go 2-drop, 1-drop. But as I was saying with the Kylo Ren, double red Kylo, you get access to a couple of really awesome cards like Bo-Katan. The yellow version, you get access to a lot of tempo plays. Green Kylo, I mean, you do get a few things like Star Viper here isn't too bad. You get Palpatine's Return if you want to go that route. It's not too bad if you want to go super low to the ground and you just commit to the sort of style that Kylo Ren encourages. So that's not too bad. Ooh, do I want to resource this Poe? I think I just want to resource this Rebel Assault and guarantee myself a couple plays here. But I could have got resourced the Poe and then smuggled out the Cassian next turn. Daring Raid, huh? They're going to deal 2. Interesting. Let's go ahead and just start off by attacking with the R2. I'm looking for a Wrecker at this point. And I might just put... Yeah, let's go Wing Leader on the Battlefield Marine, because this can now one-shot Kylo. I was thinking about putting it on Sabine, but there's not really a reason to do so. All right, we're just going to one-shot the Kylo. We are definitely the player that's really ahead here, which is nice. We also have the ECL available, but so do they. And so this can shift reasonably quickly. Let's go ahead and resource probably this Cassian, since we already have one in the resource pile, and I don't really see us playing it from our hand when we can play it from a resource pile. But they're gonna kill Sabine and kill my Battlefield Marine. I like it. I like it a lot. I think that we really can't lose this game. Yeah, they killed 2 things there, which is kind of sweet from them for sure, but they used up their ECL. We're gonna be able to drop a Poe Dameron here. They are restoring 2 with this Consortium Star Viper, which is really nice for them. But we're going to be able to kind of set up our next couple of draws. We're going to drop a Poe Dameron, and ideally we hit something pretty good. The cards that we did hit, well, are pretty reasonable. We get to go ahead and play Fighters for Freedom plus Ketsu, or ready up a Cassian this turn. So we have a lot of upfront damage. Not really ECLing out into IG. Don't want to be trading my Poe with the ECL. Oh, they're going to Palpatine's Return here, huh? Okay. I think that's okay. I think what we do is just attack into their base, see what we have on top. Okay, K2 is pretty good. Let's just play out all of our units here. They're going to want to trade with the Poe Dameron next turn anyway, so we can just get in for 6. Doesn't really matter what we do. We're not discarding a card. We could deal 1 to each base and then pass. K2... A-Wing, I can play the K2 and the A-Wing, or I could resource the K2 and then play the Cassian plus A-Wing. You know what? I think that's actually a little bit better. It's going to guarantee us some damage. And I think they have to kill Poe Dameron here. If they don't, then they are just taking so much damage. They could have a Darth Vader. They're playing a much more mid-range style of deck. And that's what I don't like about this Kylo Ren build, is that you just end up playing like a weaker mid-range build when you could have been playing something else. And look at all these Palpatine's Returns, like not really doing too much, huh? Now they're just going to go ahead and die because we get to play this. We get to ping them both for 1, and then we get to play a Cassian, which also pings for 1 and then attack. And this like style, right? This is what I was talking about with the Kylo Green. Not that, you know, our opponent's not trying something fun. I love the Palpatine's Return strategy. Like, I think that's a fun thing to do. This kind of like splits up your deck to this, like, okay, I'm going to be playing like more mid-rangey cards in my Kylo deck, trying to set up Palpatine's Return with a discard. If you're playing Palpatine's Return in like Force Throws and Death Star Stormtroopers and Star Vipers, you could also play that in just Darth Vader if you wanted to, and I think that gives you a little bit of a better payoff. Just having a weaker leader at this point really didn't use their action a single time on Kylo, and that's usually what Kylo Green kind of reinforces. But sweet, we did get double Palpatine's return, and ECL IG did a lot of work that game. We didn't even use our ECL, mainly because we didn't really have that many amazing targets. Like ECLing out Poe to trade with something is not something that you're normally going to want to be doing. But I guess we just didn't really have an amazing option. The one thing that we could have potentially done was like ECLing out something, or ECLing out the Sabine Wren to kill the Death Star Stormtrooper turn 1, or like ECLing out an A-Wing to kill their Star Viper, I guess, but there wasn't really many options. Anyways, on to the next one. Into our next game, we get ourselves a Mando Blue. This is a deck that can really do some work against Sabine Green. This is one of our harder matchups, to be honest, and we're going to definitely mulligan this. We have no turn 1 plays. Drew ourselves into a pretty reasonable hand, and one thing about this matchup is having multiple units to deploy is pretty important. And I actually do, even though Inspiring Mentor could be good here, and maybe I should keep it around. You know what? I was going to say I could resource the Wrecker and then, keep the Inspiring Mentor around for the higher upside, or I could resource the Inspiring Mentor for the guaranteed Wrecker that I'll have in my hand. And I think I prefer it to be that I have the guaranteed sort of play early on, because one of the ways that you really do some major work against this Mandalorian deck is you go ahead and you play a bunch of units and then you buff them up, which can get them potentially out of range of the Mandalorian stuff going on. Now here we drew ourselves into honestly a pretty amazing couple of draws. Fleet Lieutenant and Red 3 are both quite good. I do like the Red 3, and I do like the Fleet Lieutenant. The question is, what do I want to resource here? So I can go 3-drop into 2-drop, 2-drop next turn, or I can go 3-drop into 3-drop, 1-drop next turn. I think I would rather go the 2-drop, 2-drop next turn. So I'm actually going to resource this R2 and then just keep both of my powerful 3-drops in play. One of the reasons why I used my action in this game versus against the Mando Blue or Mando Red deck we fought earlier is because the unit that they played was a space unit. And whenever you play a space unit, oh man, I think I messed up here. I meant to Fleet Lieutenant. Wow, I just completely messed that up. Anyways, that was a big mistake. I should have Fleet Lieutenant in with the Battlefield Marine. But they have many fewer upgrades to play here with Mando when you play a space unit to start off. So just something to keep in mind. Red 3 is obviously not something that I'd be interested in playing here because of the fact that they have a restored arc, but that's okay. We are going to just start off by dealing 1 damage with the Battlefield Marine. If they have some sort of upgrade on the Clan Run Rescuer, we don't get to attack in with the Battlefield Marine, but I think that's higher upside because I want to see what they're doing here on their turn before we kind of make any specific plays. Spark of Rebellion, huh? Well, no matter what they take here, it's not too bad for us. I'm going to take the Fleet Lieutenant. Okay, so Fleet Lieutenant down. That's not really that big of a deal. Let's go ahead and get Sabine Wren readied up. They cannot exhaust Sabine with an upgrade. Has to be 4 or less remaining HP. I would have loved to Fleet Lieutenant last turn. That would have been the preferred option by a large margin. Let's go Sabine Wren here. And again, I'm stalling on the play as much as I can. My feeling is that they have some sort of card to play in response to my Inspiring Mentor, but I guess not. So let's go Sabine Wren. I'm just going to attack in, get an experience over on Battlefield Marine, attack in with Battlefield Marine for 4. So I actually ended up getting that extra damage with the Battlefield Marine, which is quite nice. Remember, we have a Cassian here from our resource pile, which does look quite nice as well. And Ketsu Onyo could do some work in this matchup. This is a matchup where if you get it early, it can be amazing, but at this stage in the game, you're really not likely to get in an attack. So I don't think that that's what we're going to be doing here. So they can play an upgrade and exhaust our Battlefield Marine, preserve some damage for sure, but they can't exhaust Sabine Wren. So that puts us in a pretty nice spot. And we do have the Medal Ceremony. And if we go ahead and ready up a Cassian from our resource pile, okay, they're going to probably get rid of the Fighters for Freedom. Wow, they got rid of the medal ceremony. I'm a little bit surprised on that one. Sparker Rebellion is not a scary card. I am not worried about that at all. We're going to attack in for 4 with the Battlefield Marine since that's the highest power thing that they can exhaust. And yes, they can exhaust this with being Ren, and technically that would also attack for 4, but that's not really that big of a deal. Instead, I'm going to attack in with the Sabine afterwards since they attacked, because remember, we can ready up a Cassian, attack with Sabine, and then essentially get rid of their HP. Interesting. So here, I'm going to attack in for 4 into their base. If they put a shield token on this Protector of the Throne, then we no longer are going to be able to attack into their base. So I think what I want to do here is just attack, put an experience token on something, and let's see if they security complex the Protector of the Throne. Because remember, if they go ahead and do that, then this is going to get Sentinel. All right, well then they did not do that, so we get to kill them. Okay. I made one major mistake, and that was just me brain farting because I was talking, and that was I should have Fleet Lieutenant with the Battlefield Marine on turn 2. Instead, I went ahead and played the Red 3, which did absolutely nothing for us. Can you imagine if I had a Fleet Lieutenant on this board and have attacked with an extra 2 points of damage? The game would have been so over, but I didn't. Again, another matchup where we didn't really have an amazing ECL situation. Like, yes, I could have ECL'd the Fighters for Freedom. I suppose I could have ECL'd the Sabine Ram, but none of that really mattered. And there's no reason to have used it in this game, where if they had something pretty nice with like a Devotion or something and exhausted something and restored, and they flipped Mandalorian, that's when I would have wanted the ECL, where I could like ECL'd out Wrecker or whatever. But very happy that I resourced the Wrecker early on. We didn't even get to 6 resources, and that was the next game. Let's move on to, well, what is this, game number 4 or 5? I don't remember. Into our next matchup, we got ourselves a match against Ray Red, one of the more popular decks in the format right now. Also a very, very powerful one. Now, against Ray Red, usually, oh, well, there you go. You can see sometimes this happens. Sometimes I'm like, oh, they're ready. Then they randomly disconnect. I'm going to keep this in because I was excited about fighting the Ray Red, but you kind of see what goes along, you know, my process of trying to find a game. Oh, look at that. Han Green. That's what we're fighting. I was going to say something about Ray Red, which was Pillage and Force Throws are not nearly as good against Sabine as they are against other decks. But this is, well, a reasonable hand. Nothing that is worth mulliganing, at least in my opinion. I am probably going to resource this Inspiring Mentor and the Wrecker. And my guess is that I would want to ECL out K2. This is one of those scenarios where ECLing out K2 does do some work because of Medal Ceremony, which I can potentially put in their experience token on K2. Now, against Han, A-Wing looks like a good turn 1 play in general against a lot of decks, but not against Han, because they can just drop a Millennium Falcon, and then we are really, really sad. So we really don't want to be seeing a Millennium Falcon come down. They're going to take the K2, which is totally fine. That still leaves us with a play next turn. Drew ourselves a Ketsuonyo, and we got ourselves a Wrecker here. I think I want to keep the Wrecker. Based on what I'm drawing here, we drew pretty mediocrely with Ketsu plus Wrecker. Would have loved the Fleet Lieutenant here, or a Wing Leader or something of that nature. But A-Wing on turn 2, not exactly an amazing play. They're going to go ahead and play a DJ. Now, this might seem a little bit awkward, but we're going to Medal Ceremony the Battlefield Marine just to get it out of range of this DJ. Drawing ourselves Spec Force Soldier A-Wing. This is, again, just a pretty awkward set of draws. But it's okay. We could potentially just leverage the power of this Wrecker into the middle late game. As I mentioned, the reason why Sabine Green is so scary is even if you have these awkward draws in the early game, or your opponent Sparker Rebellions you or whatever, you are just so much better off because of your late game potential with Wreckers, with Podamerons, and things like that. Our opponent really hasn't used their Han action at all, so they must have had a pretty weak hand. They also just played a DJ. And again, the reason why I went with Medal Ceremony is because of that DJ. Let's go ahead and attack for 3 here with the A-Wing. They're going to kill our A-Wing with the Millennium Falcon. And I'm going to pass. I'm not even going to bother playing this A-Wing, which feels a little bit sad, but, you know, they're... Oh, wait. I should have deployed Sabine. Oh my gosh, what am I doing here? That was a free attack for additional 3 points of damage. That was not smart of me. This is what happens when you start talking too much and you're playing Sabine green, guys. You just make a misplay. And it's just tragic. It's just tragic. Anyways, we should have had the Sabine Wren on the battlefield, and we should have gotten in for an additional couple points of damage. I'm going to put the 2 experience on Battlefield Marine, which prevents them from going for their Han Solo 7 turn, because of the fact that we can one-shot their Han Solo. And if they deploy Han, I am very interested in getting rid of the Han. And looks like they had to go with Waylay, which ended up working a lot better for us because of the fact that, well, we don't get 7'd out this turn. Let's go ahead and claim initiative. They're going to go ahead and hit with the Han. See if they decide to hit. Okay, so they decided to hit the Sabine. Drew ourselves a couple of different cards. Inspiring Mentor, A-Wing, Battlefield Marine. They are going to pay 1 to keep the Millennium Falcon around. And to start us off, I'm kind of curious to see if they're going to attack my Sabine. So I'm actually going to go ahead and just start off by attacking with Sabine. And then we're going to ECL out a Wrecker. And we'll destroy the Wing Leader. 5 damage to DJ, and then ambush, hit Han. And now they have to have something for 6 resources. Now, remember, this is the reason why this is so powerful, is because, okay, they're going to ambush into our Wrecker, but they have an exhausted Han, which prevents them from using his action, while also preventing them from playing a 7-drop, which is what Han's trying to do this entire game, right? Let's go ahead and resource this Inspiring Mentor. At this point in the game, it's not really all that relevant. We're just going to get in for a bunch of damage, 5 damage here. But if I had deployed Sabine earlier, we would have won this game by now. And that was just me. I could have undid, but like that was like a Carabas online talking type of play. If I'm in paper, that's something that like doesn't normally happen because of you know, I'm like pay attentioning. I'm looking at my screen, or I'm looking at my you know, situation on the board and able to kind of manage all of that. K2, excellent draw. Red 3, well, I think I'm not going to resource anything. Not really a reason to. We're just going to start off with an attack with a Battlefield Marine. See if they have anything else. They're going to U-Wing reinforcements. They have to get a Sentinel. Even if they do, we attack with Sabine. They could get like a Han Solo, but that doesn't work in terms of like, you know, being able to kill something. The reason why I say we can just attack into the Sentinel with Sabine is because it deals 1 damage to the base, and then we have the Sabine action the following turn. So they're going to have some way to heal. They can't get like Reinforcement Walker or whatnot. And I mean, Greedo, Tech, Leia doesn't actually do it. So that is going to be game. That should have been a win even sooner. Because of my misplay there with the Sabine Wren, we ended up not quite getting there. But we did play some really nice options for us. And the big thing for us was being able to keep our opponent off of that Han Solo 7 turn. If they were able to flip Han, attack, and then U-Wing reinforcement, and then get this board out, that could have changed things, right? It's not an impressive U-Wing reinforcements by any means. Like, maybe they had other options. I don't know. I don't even know how to see the cards because, well, it's just them searching, so they're not gonna show us. But if they had a little bit of a better U-Wing reinforcements, or if they had like a Han Solo, that could have really hindered our damage. So making sure our opponents kept off of that is a nice way to deal with Han. And it's not even like keeping them off of it because we're killing their units. It's because of the threat of us being able to kill their units. Yes, we missed out on a little bit of damage because of that, but I think that was worth it in the long run. It's, again, playing kind of safe because we can, because of how powerful Wrecker is, because of how powerful Poe Dameron is. And you saw, again, that game would not have been winnable if we didn't have Wrecker. Not only did we kill Han Solo, but we also killed their other unit, leaving our leader alive, which, again, caused us to have many options to win the game. If we didn't have Sabine alive, they could have exhausted the fleet lieutenant. maybe had something else to play, but also made them syndicate lackeys into our wrecker, which traded. It was amazing. And we got in damage with the wrecker. Super great. One of the reasons why Sabine's still so powerful. Next up, we got ourselves a pretty interesting matchup against Jabba Blue. Now, in this matchup, I am really tempted to keep around this wrecker, but I think the thing that I really want is to have our K2 have a turn 1 play and have the 3 drop, but not be forced to having that wing leader. Okay, they're going to put a bounty on the battlefield ring. We're going to do 1 damage. They may have a reputable hunter. Looks like they do. That's totally fine. We got to keep our battlefield marine, which means we get to go wing leader, pump up the battlefield marine, and actually get out of range of the reputable hunter. Usually that's going to be the thing that, you know, is a little bit scary from Jabba, is the reputable hunter on turn 1 for Sabine, but we have the nice answer in wing leader, our battlefield marine. And even though they had the initiative, they had to pass to get the bounty on our unit to even have this option available. And now we just get into their base. And we also have the K2 follow-up on next turn, which is going to be awesome. So let's go ahead and just attack for 5, deal 1 damage. I think that it's reasonable to have attacked our base or even attacked the battlefield marine there if they wanted to, but I can see why they didn't. Here I could go Fighters for Freedom plus R2 or just K2. I am more excited about just going K2. Okay, that's a Traitorous. Traitorous is very excellent. I've talked a lot about this one, but I really do like Traitorous. Now, here's the tricky part about Traitorous. We're going to play a K2, and let's see if they decide to kill K2. So, it's a little bit of a mind game. I'm baiting them into attacking K2. Okay, they're going to claim initiative. All right, well, let's just attack into their base with Sabine, because Poe Dameron can actually defeat the Traitorous upgrade, which is kind of an interesting thing. But I didn't want to miss out on an entire play because of it. So that was pretty important. Now, I would still be interested in defeating the Traitorous, but also at the same time, I can't be missing out on like that many points of damage. It's too much. I'm still going to ECL out Poe Dameron almost assuredly to defeat this Traitorous, but that's okay. Let's go Poe Dameron. Let's resolve the ambush attack. We're going to hit the reputable hunter. I'm going to deal 2 to their base. I'm going to defeat the Traitorous to get my battlefield marine, and then not discard the 4 cause. So yes, Traitorous is a good card, and I do like Traitorous, but against the Sabine Ren matchup, it's pretty bad because of Poe Dameron. Now, they can capture Poe Dameron or battlefield marine here, which would be totally reasonable for them. Oh, they have Overwhelming Barrage. Even better. So they can knock out both battlefield marine and Poe Dameron here, which is pretty good. And we're going to have to try to get in as much damage as we can. Let's go ahead and get in for 4. Looks like they're going to capture the K2. Seems reasonable to me. Let's ping for 1. They should probably just hit the base. They don't even need to hit the wing leader. Let's just play a K2. And we are going to pass. Double 4 cause. That should finish it up. Definitely a strong couple of draws. Unless they have some sort of healing. They had a really nice curve. Traitorous, the battlefield marine, prevented some of the damage, at least long enough. Take captive, huh? Nice. Take captive. Reinforcement walker. Interesting. All right. Well, reinforcement walker doesn't do it. Does not do it. We have a 4 cause. We could top the wrecker and pass on everything else. And, well, Sabine Wren finishes it off. So even if I didn't have the other 4 cause, it wouldn't have mattered. Our opponent had to have gotten rid of K2 in order to even have a chance, because this just gets in for the guaranteed 4. And I think that playing the reinforcement walker puts them in a position that, well, forces us to have, or not playing the reinforcement walker forces us to have the double 4 cause, right? Because if you think about it, like them playing reinforcement walker, they're at 24 HP. We end up being in a situation where we get to attack for 4, right? So they only heal 3, but we get in for 4. And them take captiving the K2 actually prevents us from getting in for an additional point of damage. Now, take captive here. Where are you? Where are you? Take captive. take captive here, you could just have a friendly unit captures an enemy non-leader unit. So you can just have Jabba capture the K2. So there's no restrictions here. But that actually prevents us from winning the game with just K2 and a 4 cause. We would have had to have double 4 cause, and that's what we did have. But just to keep in mind, like, that ends up net a little bit weaker than just taking the K2 as captive. Anyways, pretty nice game here, pretty quick one, and that's, well, a pretty fun one. We got to see Podamer do some sweet stuff. On to the next. Into our next matchup, and I can't tell you how many times I've said this, but we're going to resource some cards, and it's not going to be these 3 drops. We really want Fleet Lieutenants, and Wing Leader is also a very nice play when Sabine comes down. Now, in this matchup, we got ourselves Bosk Yellow, so I think our A-Wing's a little bit safer than our Battlefield Marine, so I'm actually going to go with A-Wing to start us off. Now, it's very possible that they could have, you know, a really poor situation for us where they have, I don't know, some sort of way to kill this thing on turn 1. They could, like, bounty it and do something else. Like, they have a lot of options, right? But we'll see what ends up happening. Wing Leader, kind of mediocre against Bosk if we don't have... Okay, they're going to mock Clunky. Okay, so they've essentially, you know, killed our thing on turn 1, which is, you know, pretty good for them. Heroic Sacrifice looking pretty bad at this point because you really want units on the board. But as I was saying earlier, they really, really have a lot of ways to kind of deal 1 damage. So Wing Leader can die, but Wing Leader dying isn't the worst because the thing that you really want is the 2 experience. So we just have to kind of make sure that we're getting in that 2 experience before anything else happens. Here, the Fleet Lieutenant was actually a pretty nice draw. So we're just going to go Fleet Lieutenant, the Sabine Wren when we can. But don't need to start off with Fleet Lieutenanting the Fighters for Freedom. Not really necessary. Let's go deal 1 damage. They're going to put a death mark. They're going to be able to deal 1 damage to it. We can put a Wing Leader on the Fighters for Freedom, actually. So they deal a damage to it. So this will be... It's a 3/3. It goes up to 3/5. They deal 1 damage to it, and they can't kill it with Boba Fett. So I think Wing Leader actually on the Fighters for Freedom looks pretty good here. If they put another upgrade on it, then of course that's a little bit unfortunate for us, but you know, not too much that we could do about that. And I'm actually considering killing off their Dengar here with my Sabine Wren. Although, not sure if that's really what I want to be doing. They can put a bounty on the Wing Leader and just kill it. So that's something that we do have to consider. Also, their Boba Fett would just be able to kill my Sabine Wren if that was the case. Wing Leader, obviously that threw off their plans because they don't have an immediate play afterwards. But we do get to get down this R2 here. The thing that I'm worried about is potentially getting outvalued here by a bunch of random bounty stuff. So let's go R2 here, Metal Ceremony. I don't think we're going to have many units on the battlefield, so I don't really see a reason to have Metal Ceremony. Boba Fett can't hit Fighters for Freedom, otherwise it's just going to die, which I don't think is really what they want. So if I were them, taking initiative seems pretty reasonable. If they do that, then killing their Dengar with Sabine seems reasonable to me. Ma Clunky, huh? Well, that's the second one that they've got. And it is pretty good against us for sure. Boba Fett, though, not really that scary on this board. They're passing, huh? All right, well, we're going to attack. Them hitting the Sabine Wren doesn't actually kill. Wait. That entered play. That... my Sabine would be alive. So they changed how leaders work. I talked about this in the past, but when you play a leader, it's entering play. So this should not do 3 damage to the defender because our leader entered play. So that was something that they changed about 2 weeks ago, actually. So Boba Fett's leader readies resources. My Sabine should be alive. They should not be able to kill it with Boba Fett there. So my so my Sabine should be alive. It's a bug. Not really much we could do to fix it. But that's unfortunate. Maybe we can see if we get through this game regardless. We'll just claim initiative, I guess. I mean, there isn't really much that they can do about it, right? It's just a matter of fact. We should have Sabine alive right now. They should not be able to kill with Boba. Let's see. Wrecker is a great draw. Now we can go Fleet Lieutenant plus Inspiring Mentor, which looks pretty good here. Now, I could put Inspiring Mentor on the Fighters for Freedom to start us off. But I think I'd rather just guarantee the damage, although that prevents from Bosk potentially killing it. You know what? I'm going to go with the absolute maximum value play and put the Inspiring Mentor on the Fighters for Freedom. So what this allows me to do is, if I do get an attack in with it, I get an extra experience token, which is awesome. Second thing it prevents them from doing is killing my Fighters for Freedom with Bosk for free. Third thing is, even if they do kill the Fighters for Freedom, I also get an experience token. So it's not really that big of a deal. And as far as on board right now, the only way they deal with it is Boba Fett, which is really not that great. This game would definitely be a lot different if I had Sabine on the battlefield, but we are going to try to fight through the bug. Let's see if Sabine Green is just that powerful to where we can go ahead and fight through the bug. So let's go ahead and Fleet Lieutenant attack in with Wing Leader, get in for 5. They're going to ready up a Bosk. We're going to go ahead and attack in with R2. Cassian Andor, pretty weak here. We're probably going to ECL out this Wrecker to kill the Bosk. Bounty posting, huh? Okay. They're going to be able to pay the cost of a bounty here. Kind of curious what they're going to go for. They're probably going to kill this Fleet Lieutenant is my guess. Oh, what? Oh, they're playing Dengar here. Okay. So our opponent's kind of like doing a bunch of things, and then I guess they're trying to get the extra damage off of the bounty posting. Makes sense to me. Seems reasonable. If we had a Sabine alive right now, I don't feel like the game is winnable at all for them. But I think the game is still kind of tough for them. They can play a Wanted. They could double claim, but double claiming doesn't do too much here. Because unless they have like a 2 or 3 resource play. Because they could double claim it, but like who cares, you know? Let's see what 5 resource play they might have. Again, Wrecker can potentially kill their entire board. Okay, so they have a Chrysanthemum, which is fine. Chrysanthemum's not bad by any means, but here we're going to resource this K2 because we're going to go Wrecker into Wrecker. And I'm going to ECL out this Wrecker. We're going to go ahead and defeat this R2. Hit the Bosk for 5, and then I'm going to ambush this Dengar to make sure I get in for damage. Now, I could have killed the Chrysanthemum, but Chrysanthemum, at least right now, can't actually kill the Wrecker. And so this allows me to get in damage and then put them in a situation where they have to use their actions to actually finish off Wrecker, or just have a situation where they have to use their resources to finish off Wrecker. So again, this looked pretty bad earlier because we had the Sabine enter play. And again, reiterating that Boba, what he says is he could deal 3 damage to the exhausted unit if that unit didn't enter play this round, right? But the way the new leaders work is that it does enter play this round. So we do have to kind of keep that in mind. Poe Dameron, not what we want. Even though it's a great card, not what we want. We are really, really looking for they're gonna attack in. I'm actually gonna claim initiative over dealing 1 damage because I want to get in for 7 here with Wrecker. But as I was saying, Sabine now enters play when I play her. It's not I play her, or it's not like triggering any when played abilities, but I do play her, or she's counted as entering play that turn. So Boba Fett actually isn't able to kill Sabine in that point. But it doesn't matter because we're going to be able to kill. And even if we didn't draw the 4 of cause, it looks like we would have been able to finish off the game. So even with the bug that favored our opponent here, we're still able to finish out the game, which is, well, pretty nice for Sabine. And again, it's all Wrecker. Like, Wrecker dealt 5 damage to their base, put a massive target on their on the unit, so that they had to deal with it, and killed their boss. Like, that is why you want to keep your ECL if you can for those Wreckers, for those Poes. All right, we got ourselves a match against Palp Blue. Now, this is a really good hand against a more controlling deck. Rebel Assault is a card that you don't really want. If they're playing blue, there's a good chance they're going to be killing off your units. Rebel Assault gets a lot less valuable if you're not able to use it with 2 different targets. Outside of that, however, we have a really nice hand because Fleet Lieutenants are quite amazing. Red 3 is also a little bit weaker. Usually, what happens is the Red 3 isn't going to have a lot of units to pump because of the fact that, well, you are really not going to have a lot of units out. That's an Emperor's Royal Guard. That's totally fine. We're just going to go ahead and Fleet Lieutenant kill the Royal Guard. Not exciting plays by any means, but it is a play that kind of has to happen. Let's go ahead and actually just claim initiative in this spot. Wing Leader, huh? Wing Leader is reasonable. I think I'm going to resource this Cassie and give us some extra power a little bit later. And I'm going to kill their Yularen. It's going to heal them up a decent amount, and it prevents their Royal Guards from having Sentinel going forward. And we get to keep our Fleet Lieutenant anyways, so that is all very good stuff. This is a pretty nice start for them. Yularen into Royal Guard is kind of what you want as the Palp player. Like, that is what you're really looking for. Let's deal 1 damage to each base. And let's go ahead and Sabine Wren. And I think we are going to Wing Leader the Sabine Wren and then just get in for some damage. And the reason I'm going with Wing Leader over Fleet Lieutenant here is because of us having Heroic Sacrifice and Wing Leader being kind of the perfect target for that. Let's go ahead and get down this Sabine Wren into the resource pile. A-Wing is what we're really looking at here as an option, because they're going to go V-Wing, huh? Okay, well, let's just attack in with the Wing Leader. I'm attacking with the Wing Leader because they have an option to defeat their V-Wing to kill my Wing Leader. Or they could kill the Fleet Lieutenant. But I think I'd rather have the Wing Leader in play, just because the space units are... Oh, well, huh? I didn't expect that necessarily. Let's just claim initiative. I did not expect them to go space unit there. I'm not going to lie. That was kind of funny. Here, let's just attack in with Sabine Wren. Guarantee as much damage as we possibly can. Again, we have the ECL available to us. We even have Cassian ready plus Heroic Sacrifice. But this Sabine Wren's going to attack for 5, which is really nice. So let's just go ahead and get in for 5. I suppose with that logic that I went with last turn, attacking with the Fleet Lieutenant would have been better. Because if I attack with a Fleet Lieutenant, then they probably ping my Wing Leader. Well, it essentially amounts to 1 additional damage, and I don't have the Wing Leader in play. Which might be a little bit more valuable, but I think the 1 damage actually is more valuable. I kind of was looking at my Wing Leader. I was like, okay, 1 HP, but the Fleet Lieutenant, I couldn't see or I guess I didn't see the 2 damage splotches on it. But Palpatine's here. Palpatine can't be deployed yet. Overwhelming Barrage, you can kill Fleet Lieutenant and Wing Leader, which would be pretty nice here. There goes quite a few different things. Let's just play the K2. And if they take initiative, that's okay. Okay, they don't take initiative, which allows us to just take initiative and guarantee this Sabine Wren damage. As I mentioned earlier, the Cassian ready plus Heroic Sacrifice gets in for 5. But then they take initiative immediately, and if they have a way to deal with Sabine Wren, then we're in major trouble. Fortunately for us in this spot, we have the K2 out. So now if we deal 5 with Sabine, we have a lot more outs. For one, killing K2 is going to hit them for 3, which is really nice. But also, we could kill our own K2 with the Heroic Sacrifice, which is also really great. So we have a lot of different options. Plus, we have the Cassian ready up as well. So that can potentially surprise them with an attack. So we have many different options. And this kind of guarantees the most options. They could have like a Super Laser Blast, I suppose. But that doesn't quite do it. Okay, the Nima Outpost Constables getting in that Sentinel action, huh? Let's go ahead and, yeah, let's do the Heroic Sacrifice business. Let's deal 3 damage. And now, if they do any action, we could potentially take initiative. And if they don't do anything and they take initiative, we can ready up a Cassian. Again, giving us more options. And remember, we still have ECL. We still have 4 causes that we could draw. Now they have 2 resources, so I think it's pretty safe to ready up a Cassian, because now they have to deal with Cassian and have to get initiative at the end of the day. So they could deal damage to Cassian to try to steal it, but they can't do 2 actions before we just attack with this Cassian. Sure, and we attack him. So that's going to be game. GG. And earlier, we didn't really have 2 units on the battlefield at any given time for the most part. I suppose actually at that Wing Leader Fleet Lieutenant turn, Rebel Assault might have been useful. So in hindsight, if I, could keep, I said, like 3 times there. I know some people will be complaining about that, which, my bad. I just realized it. Anyways, if I had kept the Rebel Assault instead of one of the other cards, we could have potentially gotten in a lot more damage on that specific turn. But that's a card that is really variant, and I'd rather just have the guaranteed options for me going through the rest of the game. Pretty nice start for them. You laureated Emperor's Royal Guard is how you want to start, but it kind of fizzled out afterwards, where they went like resupply into V-Wing Starfighter, into Outpost Constables. Like you were expecting to see reinforcement walkers, Mauls, Vaders, that type of stuff, and we didn't see any of that. Okay, pretty nice one. On to the final matchup. Into our final matchup against Bosk Green. Now, once again, and I'll say this every time, anytime you have a Wing Leader, you really want to make sure you have another 3-drop, so you don't get into that situation where you can only play a Wing Leader. That is like one of the ways that you really can put yourself in a bad situation. Now, this is Bosk Green. Bosk Green is amazing. Really like Bosk Green. One of the cards that I would have loved to see in this matchup is a Ketsuonyo on turn 1. That is a card that I love to see. Battlefield Marine's going to come down. They have a Death Star Stormtrooper, which can easily trade with Battlefield Marine. Now, we have the Cassian, we have the Wing Leader, both of which are pretty solid. Poe Dameron's also pretty good in this matchup because you can very well ECL out, kill Bosk, and defeat potentially an upgrade, so get a lot of value there. So I do like Poe Dameron. And I think what they're thinking about here is, I have Death Star Stormtrooper as Bounty Hunter's Quarry. Do I want to drop a Bounty Hunter's Quarry on this Battlefield Marine? And go with that plan. And I think the answer is yes, because you could deal damage to it. So even if I have Wing Leader, you deal another damage to it with Bosk, and then you can claim it with the Death Star Stormtrooper, and you overall trade, and then you're left over with Wing Leader. If I have Fleet Lieutenant, maybe it works a little bit poorly for you, but you still get the Bounty Hunter's Quarry, so you still use up your resources. I think this is definitely... Oh, they have a benthic 2 tubes. Well, that is a lot different. That is a lot different, I will say. Double Wing Leader is not so exciting. Now, I might be the aggressor normally, but benthic 2 tubes Death Star Stormtrooper is one of the most powerful turn 1s you can have if it's uninteracted. Benthic 2 tubes attacks for 2 and then pumps the Death Star Stormtrooper, which attacks for 5, which is really quite exceptional. So you really want to avoid that if you possibly can. So let's go ahead and play a Cassian here. And let's see if they decide to attack into my Battlefield Marine. Okay, they are. That's fine. We're going to deal damage to each base. And we're going to pass. So 4-drop, we got ourselves a Fleet Lieutenant. Wing Leader looking kind of awkward here at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and resource it. Doesn't really shape up. I went with Cassian because it's a lot less easy to defeat. If I had gone with the Wing Leader here to pump up the Battlefield Marine, I think we would have been in a really tough spot, actually. And I think I'm going to go with the K2 here. So they're a lot more aggressive than I honestly was expecting. So K2 or a Cassian attack. They're going to play a Dengar, which is, going to be readied up, which is kind of cool. Love that little synergy. They can't do it a second time. They're going to pass. Okay. Let's play a K2. And if they want to kill the K2, that's fine. If they pass again, I'm just going to claim initiative. I could have ACL'd out K2 into Dengar, but I could also ECL out Podameron next turn, kill the Dengar, kill the Bosk. So we have a lot of options here. And now I think they're thinking about, do I just kill this K2 with whatever I have in hand? I'm not sure what they have. They could have all sorts of things. They could have some sort of bounty to place on a unit to deal 1 damage to it. They could have some sort of way to pump up Toro, like a hot shot blaster or whatnot. I don't know what they have, but who knows, right? Super Laser Tech ECL plus Toro. Okay, they're going to hit Cassian. Okay, let's go ahead and deploy Sabine now. I think that's relatively safe. That is a Super Laser Technician. Okay. That's okay. Let's just go ahead and attack into their base. If they want to get down a Bosk, that's totally fine. Let's see what he wants to do with the Bosk. Remember, we have ECL Poe, which is looking excellent here. We are going to make them discard, actually. Give them as few options as they can have. Red 3 looking kind of mediocre. This is a pretty straightforward one. We ECL out a Podameron. We resolve the ambush attack. We kill the Toro. We discard the Fighters for Freedom to kill Bosk. We can discard the Fleet Lieutenant to make... We ECL Podameron, resolve the ambush, discard the Fighters for Freedom, kill Bosk, pass, don't defeat an upgrade, discard the Fleet Lieutenant to make them discard a card from their hand. And this prevents them from making any play this turn, so they cannot interact with the Podameron. And that's a secondary... Oh, it's a Benthic 2 tubes. Wow, they kept the Benthic 2 tubes. That's a little surprising to me. So now they could attack Poe, I suppose. They claimed initiative. We're just going to get in for some damage. And the reason why I discarded all the cards in my hand is because we have Cassian in the resource pile, and we have this for a cause. We actually have quite a few cards that are kind of interesting to use here. Okay, they're going to kill the, what's it called? The Poe. Let's just get in for a decent chunk of damage with my Sabine. Let's for a cause. Hopefully hit something good. Fleet Lieutenant's good. And then let's bin the rest. And then let's pass. R2, kind of mediocre. So remember, Fleet Lieutenant can get in with either one of these units. And that's going to be game. If they just attack with Maul, that is going to be game. They need to have something a little bit better. And that's going to be game. So kind of an interesting situation there. I had a feeling they had like ECL something. But they ended up kind of doing some stuff. And I suppose they ended up kind of having a little bit more of an aggressive draw, but like kind of a weaker draw. Anyways, that was the last match. I know I'm rematching, but I'm going to just do this for some funsies on the side. And then let's talk about Sabine Wren in the wrap up. So what do we learn with Sabine Green? Well, first things first, how do you decide what Sabine Green deck to run? And why did I decide to run this one for the video or this variation, since there's a million different variations, Dark Sabers, Mandos, you can play all sorts of red and green cards. First things first, the Rebel package in the deck is kind of core to Sabine from set 1, and it didn't get weaker by any means. That initial start is what won you the game in set 1. That initial burst of damage, and it's still here in set 2. The Sabine Wrens into Fleet Lieutenants, the A-Wings into Fleet Lieutenants, the A-Wings into Wing Leaders, the Fighters for Freedom, the Red 3s getting in for more damage. All that stuff is stuff that's still really strong. That stuff shouldn't be changed if you're going to run the Rebel version of the deck. So none of the Fighters for Freedom, none of the Battlefield Marines, Sabine Wrens, A-Wings, Red 3s, Fleet Lieutenants, Wing Leaders, none of those can be really cut. The Cassian, I also consider part of that package. It really helps you smooth out your curve in a lot of these weird games, and also just acts as a 3-drop that has high toughness that oftentimes will not be able to be killed. K2, kind of part of that Rebel package, not necessarily as much, but also just hits in for reach. I don't think that that's changeable, even in the non-Rebel version. Same thing goes with Poe Dameron and Wrecker. If you're playing the Rebel version or not, Poe Dameron and Wrecker are what make ECL Sabine the scary threat that it is. It makes it so that you actually can win that middle to late game. None of those cards are really interchangeable, and I would also put For a Cause in that category because of the reach that it provides, especially in a deck that has all heroism cards, which this one does. Some lists, you can run some timely interventions and things like that, which might reduce the value of For a Cause, but at least in a deck that's running 90% plus heroism cards, For a Cause just reaches and gets in for so much damage against certain matchups. The flex slots in this deck are going to be cards that are really in this top row, bar Battlefield Marine, and also Ketsu Onyo and Inspiring Mentor. So Ketsu Onyo, this is a nice addition to the 2-drop slot, gives you another couple of 2-drops. In this was previously X-Wings and Rebel Pathfinders is what you would find. Now, X-Wings I found to be extremely weak. It just doesn't get in enough damage. You really want a 3-powered unit on turn 1, not to mention the kind of meta right now isn't favorable for a lot of space units, which is why Red 3s and A-Wings, maybe not necessarily be the best option. So having more, kind of mediocre space units in your deck are a little bit weaker. Rebel Pathfinder is just even weaker than that. A 2-3 ground unit is like not where we want to be at all. So Ketsu Onyo kind of fills that slot, but she's not a rebel. And she is not as strong in games where you really need that rebel on turn 1. And there are games that you have a Fleet Lieutenant and no other turn 1 play, and you have to play Ketsu Onyo, and you're a little bit sad because your Fleet Lieutenant can't attack in for sim damage. But of course, Fleet Lieutenant can be played at really any point and be good if you have a rebel unit. The Inspiring Mentor is only really good if you're able to consistently have another unit alongside the Inspiring Mentor. If you only have the one unit to put Inspiring Mentor on, it's not great. It's really meant for that Sabine flip turn where you could go 2-drop into 2-drop, and that's where having some extra 2-drops matters. Same thing goes if you're fighting, decks that could kind of clear out a lot of the board with Rebel Assault. You don't want to be playing these cards if your opponents are kind of clearing out the board. That's where you side them out, or you could change the numbers on them. So some decks that you'll see out there are running 0 Rebel Assaults. Some are running 3, some are running 2, really depends. Some decks are running 0 Inspiring Mentors and instead are playing Darksaber, which can be potentially very powerful in just getting in damage with the Sabine flip turn. And some decks can't deal with that. You can even swap out these Inspiring Mentors for Darksabers. All that is totally fine. Same thing goes with Spec Force Soldier. If you're playing Spec Force Soldier in a deck or against a deck that doesn't have any Sentinels, it's a 1-mana 2/2, which is really weak. You'll side that one out as well. And it's usually against the same decks that are kind of bad for Rebel Assault and Inspiring Mentor. Heroic Sacrifice. This one's kind of just like a getcha card in that you're just getting in for extra damage, and it's really powerful with KU2. I usually like to have 1 to 2 of these in the deck. I don't like the 3 full of now that we're in set 2. We have different options available to us to kind of close out the game, but it does really close out the game in some cases. So I do like having 1 to 2 copies of those just because of its synergy with K2. And it's also pretty good with like Wreckers and Poe Damerons and things like that if you're able to get that off, or even with some of the earlier units. The R2, I play the R2 simply because there's a lot of situations where you have that 1 resource left over, and R2 fits perfectly in that scenario. It also makes your Red 3s better. It makes your Inspiring Mentors better. It makes your Rebel Assaults better. It makes your Metal Ceremonies better. It makes your Wing Leaders better. It just gives you all these additional mini synergies by just having that 1 resource play. So I found it to be good. I would put that closer to not really the flex slot. And the last thing we got to talk about is the Metal Ceremony. This is a card that some decks play 0 copies of, and some decks play 2 to 3 copies of. The Metal Ceremony is better if you have more Rebels, but realistically, it's a turn 1 through, well, not really 1, because you're not going to be attacking on turn 1, but turn 2 through 4 play. After Poe Dameron comes out and Wrecker, you're not going to have units that really synergize with Metal Ceremony. The only character that, or unit that doesn't work Metal Ceremony in this deck in the earlier turns is Ketsu. So getting a Sabine flip down and having any other unit, for example, you go Sabine Wren flip plus Sabine Wren unit plus Inspiring Mentor, attack. Maybe you have another unit available to you, maybe you don't, but putting a Metal Ceremony, just getting 1 experience token on your Sabine Wren is sometimes just good enough. And there are a lot of situations where you really don't have the ability to get through all your cards in hand. There are some situations where you can and some situations where you can't. But this is another card that can potentially come out in the sideboard and put in something else. All these cards depend on the matchup. Against the more mid-rangey decks, Metal Ceremony could potentially be a little bit better because they can't use their more high-value units to kill your units. Against Boba decks, maybe Metal Ceremony is not where you want it. Same with Inspiring Mentor. And that's where you kind of have to make those decisions. And that's where the sideboard comes in. And those are the things that, change all across the board. Depending on who you ask, these things differ. And depending on what you're fighting, these things differ. Nothing too out of the ordinary, but just things that I thought I should mention. This is kind of what I've found to be just a really powerful Sabine list. At least this archetype is the most powerful compared to the Darksaber. Hopefully you all enjoyed, and hopefully we'll have a sweet video coming up soon defeating Sabine Green. Thanks for watching. Check out the Patreon. Check out the TCG play link in the description down below, and I'll see you all for the next one.